Cyber threats are evolving, so should your defenses. Get micro-segmentation that's actually easy to deploy and powerful in action. Zero Networks makes micro-segmentation effortless. No manual tagging, guessing on grouping, or policy creation. No headaches, no downtime. Just airtight security that deploys in days, not months or years. Block lateral movement, prevent ransomware, and secure every asset automatically. Leave hackers stranded and penniless with Zero Networks. Visit zeronetworks.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Philip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Philip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Philip Wylie Show. Today I'm joined by Nicholas DiCola from Zero Networks. So we're going to get into his background as well as Zero Trust Networks, which is kind of a really hot topic these days, and kind of their solution to how they're taking care of that. So welcome to the show, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Philip. I've been looking forward to this since we chatted a few weeks ago. It's super exciting to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. And one of the things I like about episodes like this is a lot of cases I know a lot of people in the cybersecurity community, and either we've connected somehow or another, known each other for years. I have them on the show, but it's always a nice change of pace when I get to have someone on the show that I really don't know anything about, getting to learn their story. And usually it's a good experience. So I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too.
So I prefer Nick or Nicholas?
I tell people whichever one you can remember. I mostly go by Nicholas.
Okay. Gotcha. That's fine. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that works. I go by Phil or Philip, either one. And yeah. So some people I know nowadays are preferring their full name, which is understandable. But yeah.
No, it's funny, growing up, my dad he's a Robert and he was always Bob. Like that was his name. Everybody has their thing about their name, and it's interesting to see how people adapt.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, a lot of people, I guess some of the older generations more shorten it, can definitely understand using your full name. I mean, as growing up, my mom never would call me Phil, always Philip. And when I was in trouble, by my full name.
Yeah. So growing up, I had a little bit different. My dad always would say, he had a younger brother who was about 10 years younger than him. And he would always say his name, then my brother's name, then my name, just in repetition really, really quickly. And he just kind of covered all bases with that. So yeah, I always got the last of the list, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because my brother-in-law is Andrew. His dad is also Andrew, but goes by Andy. So older generation. So it's just kind of interesting how that works out. So thanks again for joining. And one of the things I have my guests do each episode is to share their hacker origin story. So if you wouldn't mind sharing how you got started out.
Yeah, of course. I wouldn't say I have a hacker origin story, more of a defender origin story. Never been on more of the attack side per se, mostly been on the defender side. But yeah, funny enough, when I graduated high school, not a lot of options, and I ended up going into the Marine Corps, United States Marine Corps, out of high school. And everything you do in the government has to be secure. I went in doing 80 and exchange type stuff, operating system type things, but of course you had to configure that in a secure manner. So from day one, it was always a little bit of security in terms of the operating system side and making sure you have all the baselines configured, et cetera. I did that for about 8 years. I left the military and joined Microsoft as a consultant, and also stayed in the reserves in the military, and over time became what they called a cyber defense weapons officer, doing more of the SOC SIM type things. But in Microsoft, helping lots of customers, various agencies deploy systems in their environment. Again, had to be very secure, had to be, et cetera. And then about 5 years into that, we started a Microsoft consulting arm around cybersecurity solutions. How do we help customers implement some of these cyber capabilities that were coming out, both prevention as well as detection and response? So we built some solutions. At the time, Microsoft didn't actually have any security solutions. They had the forefront line of products, if you remember that. They got rid of that and they didn't really have a lot of security solutions. So we ended up coming up with one thing that was called Red Forest. It was about having a dedicated forest for your admin credentials and really protecting those in case an attacker got in, because everything we saw, attacker gets in, they get domain admins in 48, 72 hours. and they quickly own everything. So how do you protect against that, as well as building some IR teams and some recovery teams to help customers when they had issues? And then that led to ending up working in our customer experience engineering organization on our cloud security products that Microsoft was developing. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Microsoft Sentinel, and a few of these other ones, and really working with customers to understand what they needed out of the products to make them work in their environment. So kind of always been in the security space ever since the start. Yeah, it was kind of interesting just how it accumulated over time. People say, how do you make your career? And I go, you know what's funny is like, every time I looked for a new job because I kind of got bored, I never found anything. And then when I stopped looking, someone called me and go, hey, you need to come join this team, like this new thing that's starting up. And I was fortunate enough to like come join these new teams at Microsoft a couple times and really help build a team and also build out these security products and capabilities that we had at Microsoft, which eventually led to me meeting our current CEO here at Zero Networks. And he called me when he left the company, said, hey, I'm going to call you in 3 years to come join our company. And I go, yeah, whatever. You're going to start a company. You'll get bought. You'll do the typical cyber startup thing. And he goes, no, I'm going to call you. And he called me almost 3 years to the day and said, okay, it's time for you to join my company. And when he showed me what we had, I was like, I got to go. This is too cool. It's a real game changer. And so, yeah, just kind of always been in security ever since the start.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how you got your start because a lot of the older folks that's been in the space longer really got their start in the military because, one time there wasn't really security within organizations. Because when I started out as a sysadmin back in 97. In most companies, it was the network administrators managing the firewalls. There really wasn't a security team. So it's kind of interesting how many people came into the field that had early experience came in through the military because, back at one time, it was really only the military practicing any kind of cybersecurity.
Yeah. And it's funny when I talk to people, my daughter is literally just went to college for information systems and is getting into the cybersecurity game out of college. I said to her like, hey, one thing that I think would really help is if you did some network administration, sysadmin type work, because you really understand the network and what's there and what users are using before you start to try to secure it, right? Like, I think that's one advantage I had in being a sysadmin to start, where you had to have things secure, is I understood, hey, what is it? How are people logging in? How do they connect to those things? Even the basic things of troubleshooting printers and the understanding the TCP/IP stack. These are all super important as you start to get into security and understanding what is the vulnerability, how do you mitigate it, these types of things. And I think some folks don't necessarily get that nowadays. They go right into security, which is still good. It's not a bad thing. I just think part of the career progression should be you go sysadmin and then you can kind of move into security. So you get some of those basics first, but it's all good.
Yeah, kind of agree with you there because for me, I started out as a sysadmin and if it hadn't been for that, if there was opportunity to jump direct into cybersecurity back then or information security or data security, as they call it back then, I probably would have, but it's just nice when you go through building those fundamentals and getting the experience with it because, if you don't have that experience, a lot of the universities, the four-year schools, some of them don't have the opportunity to do hands-on stuff. So not understanding that, you get thrown into somewhere you've got to set up some system, configure a server with security software, you're probably going to run into a lot of roadblocks and, a lot of challenges along the way. So I agree with that too. I think that's a good option. One of the things I tell people, because there's a lot of people listen that are trying to pivot into security on the show is that, you don't necessarily have to be in those roles, but to at least learn those skills. I mean, at least get to a sysadmin level skill and knowledge because it's going to make your life a lot easier. Even from a pen tester perspective, if you get a shell or command line access to a system and you don't know Windows or Linux, you're going to be doing a lot of Googling and it's going to be a lot more difficult than if you knew the operating system.
Yeah. I told my daughter, she was asking about certification paths and I was like, look, you should start with A+ and Net+. She's like, but those aren't cybersecurity related. I understand, but they're basics to understand what's going on in cybersecurity and understanding the network stack and understanding how computers communicate and even basic things like, I don't know if you ever saw the meme around, there's a whole stack of things they're running in the cloud and there's this little DNS block down at the bottom and you plug that out and everything falls apart, right? Like how DNS is so important to what's running out there on the internet. But it's that concept. You have to understand all of the building blocks to really, I think, be good in cyber and it's good experience to go through.
Yeah, I think it is still along the concept of careers. I think it's really good that people that are getting in, one of the paths I like to see people do is starting out like a computer science degree or either one of the IT degrees, and then get a minor in cybersecurity or get a second degree in cybersecurity to build those basic skills and get that fundamental knowledge.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, with college, it's limited, right? They're there to teach a lot of theory more than like the physical application. And I think what's really important, and it's tough, it's not an easy thing to do, is getting internships in between, right? To get some hands-on experience in the summertime. And my daughter was fortunate. She ended up doing the internship and they kept her on part-time throughout the school year. So she was also working throughout the school year, getting some hands-on practical application before finishing out her degree. So, it doesn't happen for everybody. I wish everybody got that opportunity. It would be really good for people, but yeah, I highly recommend try some internships in between school years so you can get some practical application in between. I know most people like to take the summer off and enjoy their time off, but if you can use the best of your time, that's a really good thing.
Yeah, that's great advice. One of the things I've seen with people getting into the field, if they had internships, is a lot easier because at least you've got some actual experience. That's the toughest hurdle. You can have all the certifications and degrees, but it's going to be a little tougher if you don't have that hands-on experience. So thanks for bringing those topics up, because like I said, there's a lot of people listen to the podcast that are trying to move from IT over to cybersecurity or trying to break into the industry. So it's always great to hear that advice. And, as mentioned, people can jump in sometimes right into it, and it'd be kind of hard not to. I mean, because like I said, if I could have went into pen testing in the beginning, that's the way I would have went, but it would have been a lot more difficult. Even going through the OSCP, when I did, and it definitely helped having a sysadmin background and having a security background going into it than trying to get in it to a straight. It is kind of difficult for people nowadays that are trying to break in. They may not know to try to build those fundamentals because sometimes they don't get that advice at the college level, just like some of the tips they don't get, like networking, the networking piece, the physical, the people networking piece that they don't hear about sometimes. It makes it a little more difficult for them to find roles.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen some folks have very successful careers, even just starting out on a help desk, right? Going in, answering tickets, even if it's just the basics of resetting passwords, updating computers, et cetera, and then building on that basic knowledge and moving over to other roles over time is definitely helpful, right? Like the basics matter, and it's hard to teach because it's not a simple thing, right? Like the complexity of what computers do and all of the networking and et cetera that we have today, especially with cloud services and et cetera, it's deep. It's a lot of things to cover, and no college is going to be able to get you through that in 4 years, plus all your kind of gen ed stuff. So again, it's very tough. You need some experience there, but
yeah. So just to get your opinion, I know your daughter's going to college for her degree, and it seems like you're kind of a big fan of degrees. What do you think about certifications? Do you think that's very helpful in landing a role in IT or cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think they show some basic level of knowledge. They show initiative because nobody's going to give you a certification, right? Like you have to go study for it. You have to go take it yourself, and, highly encourage people to do that. It's a good way to show some basic validation of like, hey, I have these basic skills to start out with. Again, A+, Net Plus is even great start. Security Plus are good ones. And then building upon those, you can move up to things like all the way up to CISSP, which I took a couple times. I'll be honest, I didn't pass my first time. And I had worked in the industry for 15 years. Like they are not easy tests, right? Like you're expected to have a lot of experience when you take that test. And there was areas in there in the CISSP that legal and physical, I'd never done those things. That's not typical IT security stuff. And it definitely stretches you. And so I highly encourage people. And I did with the offensive cyber one, the CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker. That one was super tough at one point in my career. And I think it's good to push yourself into these different boundaries to see kind of where. I also think it's good because you can see, is this something I'm really into? Like pen testing, like you were mentioning, or maybe this isn't my area. Like I learned legal and physical is not really something I'm interested in. So I don't want to focus a lot of time there, and probably would never take like a risk governance or maybe even a role that is in that space, right? Because it just doesn't appeal to me. So I think they're great for people. I think all people should try them at some point, and it's good for building your career and learning and expanding and just showing you have some basic skills and initiative to go take those certifications.
Yeah, now you bring up some good points there, because I think it's really good that people explore other areas, because a lot of people want to get into pen testing, red teaming, because it sounds so cool. It's, kind of some James Bond spy, Mr. Robot kind of sounding stuff, and it seems really cool, but then they get into they may not like it so well. And you see a lot of people end up moving out of the red team offenses side because it sometimes doesn't always pay as well as some of the other areas of cybersecurity.
Yeah. And you think about it, most organizations, it's not, it's a small part of what they do in their budgets, right? If you think about an IT organization or a CISO organization and where they're investing. I actually saw a post on LinkedIn this weekend, and this guy had a map of where people invest and like what kind of return to value they get on those investments across various different domains in cybersecurity. Yeah, pen testing is one where people pay for an annual pen test, but it's not something they typically do on a daily basis, right? It's more they get the result, they then go mitigate those results over the next few months, and maybe they retest again, but it's not kind of a continuous thing. Although more and more, it might be becoming a little more continuous, more of some of the tools. But again, it just depends on your interest, right? Some people like that side of things. Some people prefer the other side of things. Some people like the risk governance side of things. It's all in whatever's your area.
Yeah, that's a good points there, because I worked at a bank once, and it was interesting because we had like 13 people on the pen test team out of like an 1,000+ person cybersecurity team.
Yeah,
because it doesn't require as many people to do that job as it does, because firewall, you got to be watching that every day, your SOC, all that's got to be constantly monitored and administered. With pen tests, like you said, it's not always being tested, and sometimes it takes a while to get through those tests. So it's not like there's not a big requirement for a lot of people. And one of the things I like to add to that too is it's kind of a tough role to get into because everybody wants to do it. There's fewer jobs and more people want it. So, yeah.
I honestly think that's a little bit of cybersecurity nowadays. I think a lot of people are trying to move into cybersecurity, and there's, it's always, I tell people in general, right? I'm going to generalize here very broadly. Like if you look at any organization, cybersecurity or security, information security, whatever you want to call it, is probably 10 to 15% of the budget, right? Like when you talk about IT overall, and their spends and things like that, because the IT should be helping the business enable the business, and cybersecurity should also be there to help secure that business. Most organizations are not spending nearly what they spend in terms of IT budget. So it's a smaller number of roles that are available too, right? We kind of have the same problem. There's a lot of people kind of wanting to move into cybersecurity, and there's nothing wrong with regular IT either. There's a lot of great jobs in IT as well. Like, and I tell people, if you're doing cloud, security, data, now generative AI, like you'll have a good job for the next 10 to 15 years easily, right? Those things are not going anywhere anytime soon, right?
And even, as you mentioned earlier, like server security and stuff like that. So if people are even interested in security, they can still do some security functions as a sysadmin or network administrator.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of orgs out there, not the big enterprises, but the small to medium-sized enterprises that have very small teams. And most of those people are dual-hatted. They're doing cybersecurity stuff and IT stuff. So it's not a lot of time that you go to one of these organizations and they have a whole dedicated team, specifically, especially in the mid-size area to the small area, that they have people. I mean, some of the small businesses have nothing, right? Luckily, hopefully they outsource and use some type of managed security provider that can help them do those things, because they can do it at scale for many, many small businesses. That's another great area, right? Partners doing managed security, where you can learn across a bunch of different customers, is another great area.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice going back to the smaller enterprises. As you mentioned, you're not siloed, so you get to learn a lot more. Because one of the things with my sysadmin experience, although I wouldn't trade it and it was great, I had peers in smaller companies that were getting to do network stuff. They were managing routers and switches, where I was just managing servers, DNS, Active Directory, and that type of thing. But yeah, sometimes when you get in those bigger companies, you're siloed and your chance for learning other things are kind of slim. You just really specialize.
Yeah. When I was in the Marines on my second tour, I was at the Central Network Operations Center, and we had split. We had routers and switch guys, and that ran the firewalls, and then we had the operating system folks, which is where I worked, and we did all the AD and Exchange and SCCM and all those types of things across the enterprise. So we had it split. Difference being that in any military, when you have a job function, like all the computer guys were expected to know the whole stack, right? Even if you didn't actually work on it every day. Because if you went to a smaller unit, and I did go to a smaller unit a couple times, I had to know the whole stack. I was doing the routers, the switches, the firewalls, and the operating systems, even out there at the smaller unit. So it was a good job to get that breadth across there. But yeah, just like you said, it does end up over time, if you get to bigger organizations, becoming a lot more siloed.
Yeah. So we kind of got your background origin story. So what do you do at Zero Networks?
Yeah, so I joined Zero Networks 3 years ago. I'm the VP of customers, so I'm in charge of everything pre and post sales engineering customer related or partner related, which means I also own support from the post-sale side. So anything customer or partner related typically involves someone from my team. And we work closely with engineering to continually improve the product, bug fixes, these types of things that come up with customers, as well as helping customers adopt the product in their environment.
Very cool. So kind of, it would kind of sound intuitive what you guys do by the name of Zero Network. So would you kind of explain what type of solution you have?
Yeah. So we set out a couple of years ago, kind of at a vision level, to basically stop attackers from winning. So our CEO and co-founder, Benny Lakunashek, was working on the Defender product at Microsoft and kept seeing customers getting attacked over and over. And he said, why does this continually happen? And really, if you look at the root cause, it's because networks are too open and accounts are too permissive, right? There's just, once you're inside the network, it's very easy for an attacker to laterally move. Okay, well, how do we stop lateral movement? Well, the root cause or the root way to stop that is by microsegmenting the network. Well, great. There's some companies out there that are doing that already. Why are they not successful? What's missing? And so he talked with a bunch of customers and basically found like it's too hard. It takes too much time. They don't feel like, hey, we're going to get value out of the project because of how long it takes. And that was just due to the manual labor that's required. So he basically set out to solve that problem. And so we built a platform for identity and network segmentation, but make it really easy for the customer. We joke that we're the red easy button that customers can smack to actually microsegment their environment because we automated building all of the rules for the customer. That is the thing that takes the most amount of time for any customer to microsegment a network. Think about it. You have to take just two servers. This server, analyze all the traffic. This server, analyze all this traffic. See which ports and protocols it's talking on. Okay, build those rules that says this server, or maybe multiple web servers can talk to this multiple backend server. That's just two servers. That's hours and hours of time just to analyze that traffic. And you have to do it over a period of time to make sure you don't miss anything. Well, we built an automation engine that can do that on thousands of assets at the exact same time, so the customer doesn't have to. That's huge. We save them a ton of time and the ability to do that. We actually do it without agents, which is really interesting. We have an agent model too. And then more importantly, he thought, okay, if I could micro-segment, is that going to stop the attacker? Yes, mostly, but there's still one other piece that's missing. And that's that when attackers get in and they want to laterally move, they need privilege on the next machine. So they use things like RDP, SSH, WinRM privileged ports, as we call them. So we never open those. And we built a patented just-in-time MFA-based feature so that when you want RDP, you now MFA, and then you get access temporarily to that asset. So between those three things, we now can quickly microsegment the entire network without having to have a lot of deployment of agents and things like that. And we take it to the next step to block all the privileged access and require an MFA. And now you really stop attackers from being able to spread inside of it.
That's very, very interesting because I know that everyone's wanting these zero trust networks. And so kind of how much time does it save doing it your way opposed to the legacy type of configuration?
Yeah, I think in my mind, I was like, oh, we save a bunch of time, but I couldn't really calculate what that meant until I actually had a customer. One of our banking customers said to me, hey, we were planning a 2-year project for microsegmentation, and with Zero Networks, we're now planning 6 months. So they cut off 18 months of time that they can now free up to go work on their next security journey. Like, I'm sure every customer has, hey, these are the priorities and these are the ones we want to get done in which order. But now we freed them up to actually go work on their next project sooner than they thought they were going to be able to work on it. So that's huge for a customer. So, on average, we hear most projects take 2 to 3 to 5 years, and most of our customers are mostly segmented in less than 6 months. So we're saving on average 18 months to 24 months of time that they can free up and now go do their next project that they want to.
Yeah, that's amazing because I'm sure there's some people that just give up or some other project comes along doing it the legacy way and probably may not ever eventually get it implemented.
Yeah, Gartner's actually got a funny quote that most microsegmentation projects outlive the tenure of the CISO. So most CISOs, move every 3 to 5-ish years on average, right? Some are there much longer, obviously, but they're starting these projects and most of them don't even finish by the time the CISO leaves, right? Because again, it just takes a lot of human effort, and some don't even get to the micro level. They might get some rough network segmentation because that's the best they can do based on the amount of time it takes to actually get it done.
Very interesting. So how complex of a product is this to manage?
Yeah, so that's the great thing. On the backside, what we did is very complex from how we built it to make it work. because doing this in an agentless model, right? You can imagine, how do you scale and control thousands of assets across the environment, hundreds of thousands of assets across the environment in real time to be able to do things like just-in-time MFA? That takes a lot of complexity in the code that we built to be very efficient and to make sure that we don't affect the customer's network, and to build the automation engine in a way that it's accurate for the customer. But for the customer side, it's very simple. Like, most customers tell us, like, hey, I can't believe how simple this is. I literally add to learning, I walk away, I can actually work on something else for 30 days. I come back, I check the rules before the asset goes into segmentation as a light rules review, and then I segment the asset. We actually automatically segment the asset unless they choose to do that, but most just do a light rules review. So you're saving them a ton of time. And we have a customer that probably best describes, they said, hey, how many people are we going to need to go do this? And they did their own evaluation, and they were basically like, we don't need to hire anybody. Less than 1 FTE to manage the system going forward. So they didn't even have to go hire extra people to bring in Zero Networks and deploy it because of the simplicity.
So as far as the product, is this like focused on a specific enterprise size, or is this kind of scalable if fits any size organization?
Yeah, what's great is we've helped small customers, a few hundred assets, all the way up to customers with hundreds of thousands of assets. So the cool thing about how we architected it, it makes it really easy to scale up or even support a small customer if they need it in their environment. And really, everybody needs micro-segmentation. It's just, where are they at in their journey to achieve zero trust, micro-segmentation being a cornerstone of that. So where they're at in deploying or moving to micro-segmentation just depends on when they're ready to do that. But yeah, we can help customers of all sizes because of how simple the product is.
Yeah, sounds very interesting. So this manages like all types of systems, as well as works well with Windows, Unix, Linux, Mac, and so forth.
Yeah, we're using native controls. So ultimately, if you think about micro-segmentation, you're putting a firewall in front of every device. So you can imagine I'm putting a Palo or a checkpoint in front of every device. So no one can afford to put a Palo and checkpoint in front of every device. So we use what's native in the operating system, so the customer doesn't have to buy or deploy anything else. So every modern operating system has a firewall built into it. So we remotely control that firewall at scale. And even for things that don't have a firewall, we've built a capability to integrate with switches, so we can use ACLs as like a mini firewall in front of that device. So we can even do port level ACLs for what we call OT or IoT type devices, and also protect those as well.
Very cool. So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to share that we didn't discuss?
I would just say, I tell people, normally when you look at micro-segmentation in a zero trust journey, most people, I like to think of it like a hopscotch thing. There's things you have to do along the way to achieve your hopscotch. I forget what you call that on the ground. People draw it in chalk, but you're jumping along these boxes to the end of the road. And most people think micro-segmentation is at the end of the journey because they assume we're going to spend years doing it. And so the ROI is a lot less than what it could be. And I tell people, with automation and an agentless capability that we provide, that doesn't have to be at the end of the road anymore. It can actually now be at the front, and you can gain very high security posture with very little effort. And now that changes your timelines, because now you can free yourself up to go work on other things. Instead of putting it last on your list, you can move it up, get it done quickly, and then get to your other things very, very quickly. So that's the thing I would tell people to think about is, it's not your legacy micro-segmentation that you think of, hey, I'm going to spend 3 years, 5 years doing this. It's, I'm going to spend months doing this, and now I can actually achieve that very, very.
Yeah, that's very cool, especially as you mentioned, this being the beginning, because then people can put more focus on other areas and have time, since they have this level of security posture.
It's super nice because the way we do it, you can add these assets to learning. Customers can go work on other things while they're in learning, and then they can just come back and do the light review. And so it's not like, hey, I have to focus on this thing 100% of the time until everything's micro-segmented. You don't. You can put it in learning, walk over here, go do some other work, come back when it's ready to be segmented. So it doesn't take a lot of human time, whether that's going through segmentation or actually managing it afterwards. It's very, very.
Yeah, very interesting. It was great to learn more about the product, and great hearing your background story. So thanks for being my guest today.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And it's super fun. I always love to share and talk to people about what I've done in my past. So maybe it can help them in their future, as well as what we do here at Zero Networks. And maybe we can help them in the future as well, right?
Yeah, I'm sure people get a lot of good out of this, and you had a lot of great advice for both the product and career-wise. And so, like I said, there's a lot of people that listen to the show that are trying to move into other areas of cybersecurity, or trying to break into cybersecurity. So I think they'll find this advice very useful.
Awesome. Glad I could help.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Philip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Philip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Philip Wylie. Until next time.